Alright, today I'm going to be talking about An Essential Guide to Public Speaking by Quentin Schultz. What I found really interesting about this book is that it doesn't just treat public speaking like a skill to practice or necessarily a performance that has to be perfect, but instead, Schultz does really well at arguing for speaking in a way that's actually about serving people. So what I'm going to do is first walk through his main ideas, how he kind of builds his argument, and then I'll give my thoughts on what worked well for me as the reader and what I thought maybe could have been done differently. So the main idea of the book is something Schultz called servant speaking. And basically what it means is just that public speaking isn't about impressing people or trying to sound really smart or even, getting personal attention, but it's supposed to be about helping your audience. And he really emphasizes humility in his writings as like your goal as a speaker should be to benefit people listening, not yourself. And I would say with that, another big point he makes is about truth and clarity in our speech and how we represent ourselves in what we're talking about. He talks about something called straight talk, which is basically just being clear, honest, and direct in what you're saying. Not trying to overcomplicate things or beat around the bush. Because if people don't understand you, then it doesn't really matter how good your speech is. So for him, being clear is not just like a technique to learn, but it actually is, a responsibility that we have as speakers. And so that was something that I found really interesting, and that was a really good point of his. And he says that even that people are kind of always reading you, not just listening to your words, but also paying attention to your attitude, your honesty, and your authenticity. So it's really important about how you present yourself and how you act in your speech. And if those don't line up, your message can fall apart, even if your speech is well prepared. Another thing that he really stresses, and especially in that section, is listening, which is interesting because it's a book about speaking, but he makes it a point to be a good listener because you have to be a good listener first to be able to be a good speaker. And you have to understand your audience because what they care about, what they already know, and what they need is how your message will connect with them. And I thought that was really, really important. And then, kind of how he develops his argument is he builds all of this into kind of a mix with biblical ideas, but then also kind of personal advice from himself and from what he's learned. He brings in examples from figures like Jesus and Paul to explain things like the truth of one's character and how to portray yourself in a right way with being responsible and honest and humble. But then he also balances that with real practical tips like how to organize a speech or avoid common mistakes in preaching and uh, multiple other scenarios for speaking. So I guess in the way it's not like a theoretical thing, but it's actually something that everybody can apply throughout the span of preaching through just how we present ourselves in speaking. I think one of the biggest strengths of this book is definitely its focus on character. A lot of public speaking books are just like, here's how to structure your speech, or here's how to deliver better, or these 5 tips will make you a better speaker. And those can be really good, but I like how this one went deeper. It asks why you're even speaking in the first place. What's the reasoning behind it? What's your heart going into it? And the idea of serving your audience, I think, is just such a great concept and something that I definitely want to take into more as I continue to do speaking, as I continue to prepare for these videos and such things throughout the course of my life. And I think that's a really important thing of just serving the audience instead of trying to impress them or, you know, make yourself look better. And that was really refreshing. But it's also really practical The advice is really clear, it's easy to follow, and super helpful for beginners like myself, and I really enjoyed that. I don't really know of many weaknesses other than just, I think, if there was a non-Christian reading this, they might be like overwhelmed with the Christian aspect of it, but it's honestly so helpful for anybody. I don't even think that's necessarily a weakness. I think that his focusing on servant speaking throughout the whole thing was just such a beautiful way of doing it, and so I really can't say much for weaknesses, but a lot of strengths and a really good book. And some of these things are basic. If you're an experienced speaker reading this, you might feel like, okay, yep. But for beginners, great book. Experienced speakers, great book. Really enjoyable, really well done. And so overall, I say Schultz's book really challenges the way that we think about public speaking. Instead of seeing it as performing or trying to stand out, he reframes it as serving others. And I think that was the main thesis of his whole book, and definitely what I pulled from it. And I think shifting that focus as we do speeches and as we go in public speaking to focus on truth, character, and the connection with the audience that we're trying to reach is really just the core message of what he said, and it's something that I think is going to be really helpful for all of us that are going into public speaking. I really think this book is super valuable for anybody, especially if you're just starting out, and especially if you want to think really more deeply about why we are speaking, and not just the how, but the why and the heart behind it. And I think that was the main idea, and I just would really recommend the book to anybody that was trying to get into public speaking.